Today, a top Republican saying the economy doesn't need more government spending, prices are rising fast enough as it is. But the president arguing that his spending plans will actually reduce inflation. Four drug companies and a group of attorneys general reach a multi-billion-dollar settlement. What's in the landmark deal? And American Airlines and Southwest report earnings today. Their sales way up as domestic travel rebounds. That and much more coming up on NTD Business. Good evening. Great to have you with us. I'm Paul Graney. Claims for unemployment benefits unexpectedly rose last week. 419,000 Americans filing jobless claims. That's 50,000 more than the week before. Some economists blame it on natural changes in week-to-week data and one-off factors like GM announcing it was shutting down truck production in Michigan due to supply shortages. But others say it's just another indicator that the economic recovery isn't as hot as anticipated. The number of people receiving unemployment benefits in all programs nationwide did fall by nearly 1.3 million, though. That's as states ended some support programs. Economists as well expect that number to sharply decline when all programs run out in September. U.S. home sales rebounded in June after 4 months of decline. The pace was moderate, though, with higher prices, low inventory holding sales back. Existing home sales increased 1.4% last month. Year on year, it's up over 20%. The pandemic fueled demand for houses as Americans switched to remote work, never mind low interest rates, low mortgage rates. With housing supply tight, bidding wars have become the norm across the country. But the National Association of Realtors says the number of multiple offers is declining. The median existing house price increased over 23% year over year. And a top Senate Republican says the U.S. economy doesn't need more tax and spending. Mitch McConnell says the economy is recovering on its own and is worried more government intervention will lead to more inflation. But President Biden believes his spending plans will actually reduce inflation, even though he's planning trillions of dollars of spending, much of which could come through newly printed money.
Moody's today, when our Wall Street firm, not some liberal think tank, said if we pass the other two things I'm trying to get done, we will in fact reduce inflation, because we're going to be providing good opportunities and jobs for people who in fact are going to be reinvesting that money back in all the things we're talking about. Driving down prices, not raising prices.
Not quite the way I learned economics at school, but maybe things have changed. I checked with finance professor Michael Busler today at Stockton University.
When you have too much demand in the economy, you'll get inflation. Well, how do you measure demand? Demand is how much the consumers buy, how much business buys, and how much the government buys, and the foreign sector. If the government starts spending more money and starts buying more goods and services, and the economy is operating at full capacity, so it's very difficult to produce any more, that will lead to pure inflation. So I'm not quite sure of what the president's reasoning is based on every economic theory. When government spends more money, it increases demand in the economy. When you increase demand in the economy at a time we're operating at full capacity, and we're right now just about back to where we were before the virus came in. So we're pretty close to full capacity. So any more government spending will tend to make inflation worse, not better.
I believe that the president is targeting, this is my understanding of his comments, the president is targeting the other side of the equation. He's not going for the supply side to reduce the demand side, reduce the demand in the economy. He feels that through his spending plans, he will increase the number of jobs in the country, I assume increase production of goods and services, and that will help bring the price down of these goods and services. Number one, looking at the president's plans, do you feel they will create long-term jobs? And number two, can this really help with the inflation problem?
So what he's saying is he's taking a lesson from what Reagan did back in the 80s. Reagan's tax cut was what we call the supply side tax cut. What does that mean? It was geared not just at consumers, so they had more money to spend, but it was geared to business. And by reducing businesses' tax rates, that gave business more net income and more money to invest. And on a supply side, if they have more money to invest and they can grow and produce more output, that worked. It brought the inflation rate down and the economy grew. President Biden, though, is not taking a supply-side approach. He's not giving tax cuts to business or giving some kind of more capital to business so they can expand. He's looking at doing it more on a demand side, and every time you do it on a demand side, by increasing demand, it will create more inflation. I think his thoughts are on the right line, saying, look, I'd like to increase output. But you increase output by giving business the ability and the incentives to do that rather than gearing it toward consumers.
He tried to allay a lot of fears last night at the town hall on how long this inflation is going to run for. He told people it's just temporary, it's not going to last, kind of contradicted Janet Yellen in some way, the Treasury Secretary. In your view, looking at the data, looking at the policy decisions, is this temporary or are we looking at sustained price increases?
In my view, this is a sustained price increase. Now, why do I say that? The president believes that the reason we have inflation is due to supply chain disruptions. Businesses were shut down because of the virus. You had some bad weather, et cetera. Once everybody opens up, the inflation will go away, President Biden feels. I don't think that's true. The inflation we're seeing today, and it really is fairly bad, from June this year, last year to June this year, prices went up 5.4%. That's the worst in about 13 years. But of that, 3.6% has been since January. So even if prices don't go up at all for the rest of the year, inflation will be 3.6% this year. That already exceeds their forecast. If they don't do anything and the inflation keeps going the way it is, we could have inflation in the 7-8% range. And this is the first time in modern history that I can remember since the Federal Reserve really in 1980 started monitoring the money supply and inflation. They're always ahead of inflation. This is the first time I've ever seen the Federal Reserve not staying ahead of inflation, but rather saying, hey, it's going to go away. We don't have to do anything about it. If they're wrong, and I hope they're not, but if they are wrong, and I think they will be, they're going to have to take very drastic action by the end of the year.
Professor Michael Bustler at Stockton University. And we have new details on how money from companies involved in the opioid crisis will be spent. The funds will apparently be used to reduce addiction to and overdoses from opioids. Authorities reached a $26 billion settlement with some large drug companies recently. NTD's Kevin Hogan has the details.
The deal has been said to be the second largest cash settlement of its kind in U.S. history, behind the tobacco deal in the 90s.
The $26 billion agreement will bring desperately needed resources home to each of our states, an estimated $750 million here in North Carolina, to help people struggling with opioid use disorder find hope, freedom from addiction, and happiness.
The attorneys general laid out key details on Wednesday, a day after lawyers for local governments across the country said they were on the verge of settling. Since 2000, over 500,000 Americans have died in connection with prescription drugs, illegal heroin, and illicitly made fentanyl. 2020 saw record high numbers of cases, and State Attorney General Letitia James pointed to the havoc these drugs have had on New Yorkers.
And to be clear, the numerous companies that manufactured and distributed this poison did so without any regard for human life and for the national crisis that they caused.
Under the deal, Johnson & Johnson will have to pay $5 billion, with other drug wholesalers and pharmaceuticals on the hook for upwards of $6 and $7 billion. The expert says some of the money needs to go towards education and a lot of it toward treatment. $23 billion worth is expected to go towards reducing the opioid crisis through treatment for people who are addicted.
And an energy giant at the center of a $60 million Ohio bribery scheme has admitted details of its role in the corruption. Ohio-based First Energy admitted that it worked with secret dark money groups and paid a soon-to-be top utility regulator to write legislation in its favor. The settlement requires the company to pay a $230 million fine and fully cooperate with investigators. The judge says First Energy complies with all the requirements. The charges will be dismissed. The company will have 3 years to comply. The scandal has affected businesses and politics across Ohio. Even the Speaker of the House was arrested in the scheme. And a big, expensive job ahead for Pacific Gas and Electric in California. Last year, it pleaded guilty to manslaughter because its equipment ignited wildfires in the state. Now it wants to bury a large portion of its power lines. NTD's Evelyn Lee has more on what P&G executives had to say.
We are here today to launch our Make It Safe, Bury the Lines program.
PG&E, the power company whose equipment was involved in causing over 20 wildfires, the burning of thousands of homes, and the deaths of over 100 people, now wants to move 10,000 miles of power lines underground.
10,000 miles of line is a trip from Chico to LA 11 times and back. This is an undertaking that no one else has pursued at this scale, but we know that we can do it here.
The plan is expected to cost up to $20 billion. It comes after another tree fell on its lines, possibly causing the Dixie Fire that is currently blazing through California.
That tree that fell on our line is one of 8 million trees that are in strike distance to our lines. This is an extraordinary problem.
The company, which supplies energy to around 16 million in California, said it's moved lines underground before, but this time it isn't the same.
What's different and unique about this situation is the scale and the scope is truly unprecedented and extraordinary. It hasn't been done at this scope or scale anywhere else in any other energy company in this terrain.
Today's announcement is a reversal of its previous stance, which was that burying lines was too expensive. Now it says it's too expensive not to underground. Lives are on the line. Evelyn Lee, NTD News.
All right, everybody, thank you so much. Appreciate you being here today. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
And workers in Las Vegas will have to start wearing masks again. The county commission voted to bring the mask mandate back, but not for everyone. NTD's Phil Zoe has the details.
Clark County, which includes Las Vegas, has voted to bring back the mask mandate, but only for workers and not for customers or tourists.
It feels like it just doesn't make sense to me.
I definitely notice workers wearing it wherever I go, but customers, it's a mixed bag.
It doesn't make sense. Like, why do the employees have to wear them, but then the customers don't have to wear them? To me, that doesn't really make sense.
The Clark County Commissioner said the area just started opening back up. They cannot afford to have business go elsewhere. We spoke to people in New York, where the mask mandate is no more.
People have very strong opinions about them.
Either everyone wears them or nobody has to wear them.
If you're vaccinated, you can have your mask down. I feel like if you're alone and you're walking outside and there's not that many people, it should be okay.
Darcy Karua has just returned to working in person a few days a week.
I feel more comfortable with wearing mine when I'm out in public to keep my coworkers safe, myself safe. But I feel more comfortable when people wear them, if that makes sense.
But there's one thing everyone can agree on.
It's too hot for the mask. It's too hot.
Well, in the summer, the masks are hot, and so I will take it off on the street if there's not a lot of people around.
The new law does not apply to public schools or casinos, but gaming regulators say they'll enforce it anyway. The commission is revisiting the decision in 4 weeks. Phil Zoe, NTD News.
A major index has edged a little higher on Wall Street today. The Dow rose 25 points, less than 0.1%. S&P 500 gained 9 points, 0.2%. The Nasdaq added 53 points today, about 1/3%. And Uber's trucking division is buying transportation logistics company Transplace for over $2 billion. The deal is expected to speed up the unit's path to profitability. Uber's trucking division, called Uber Freight, connects truckers with shippers, basically Uber for the shipping industry. Meanwhile, Transplace works with shipping brokers and carriers to manage supply chains and plan logistics, including cross-border shipments. On its website, Transplace says it counts 62,000 unique users and has $11 billion of freight under management. Interesting deal. And the return of domestic leisure travel in the United States pushed quarterly sales at American Airlines and Southwest up by more than 300% each, fueling hopes the industry could return to profitability this year. Imagine. Conway G. Gittins has more.
It's early days yet for the rebound in the airline sector, but the group is seeing light piercing through the clouds. American Airlines posted a second quarter profit Tuesday of $19 million. That's a huge improvement from the $2 billion loss it suffered the same time last year when the health crisis grounded air travel to a virtual halt. The airline saw strong bookings from travelers eager to get out. To better position itself for an expected uptick in demand, American is increasing the number of pilots it plans to hire this year and next, according to a staff memo reviewed by Reuters. Southwest Airlines also posted results on Thursday. The domestic discount carrier saw a 300% surge in quarterly revenues. Overall, it lost money, but Southwest said things turned up at the end of the quarter and in June was able to rake in about $4 million a day. CEO Gary Kelly said he expects to see further improvement in July and profits to keep on flowing from this point on. Both airlines are now keeping their eyes on bookings to see if the Delta variant prompts some travelers to put plans on hold.
And TikTok and the Biden administration have reached a deal to drop a lawsuit over former President Trump's ban on the short video app. Court documents show both sides agreed to the suit being dismissed. President Biden already scrapped Trump's executive order targeting TikTok. The president instead replaced the order with one that addresses all apps linked to foreign adversaries like China. TikTok is still working with a government committee to address security concerns surrounding the data it has on American users. And the United States and Germany have reached a deal that would allow the completion of a controversial Russian gas pipeline to Europe without further sanctions from the United States.
So why is it that the administration, why do you believe it's acceptable to deal this way with the Ukrainians and trying to silence them over this terrible deal with the Germans?
Germany has committed in this agreement with us that should Russia attempt to use energy as a weapon or commit further aggressive acts against Ukraine, Germany will take actions at the national level and press for effective measures at the European level, including sanctions, to limit Russian export capabilities to Europe in the energy sector.
There is strong bipartisan opposition to the pipeline in Congress as well as in the Ukraine and Poland. They fear Nord Stream 2 will undermine European energy security. The project has posed a major foreign policy dilemma for the Biden administration. U.S. officials fear it would give Russia too much power over European gas supplies, potentially shutting off gas to Russian adversaries, Ukraine and Poland. But Germany's chancellor supports the pipeline, and Biden has suggested that punishing Germany for that support would be counterproductive to broader U.S. interests. And Unilever's CEO says the company is fully committed to Israel. It comes after public pressure over a decision by Unilever's Ben & Jerry's ice cream brand to end ice cream sales in disputed territories there. Pro-Palestinian groups apparently pressured Ben & Jerry's over its business in Israel and Jewish settlements in the West Bank. Its business there is handled through a licensee partner. Israel's Prime Minister warned Unilever about serious consequences from Ben & Jerry's decision, calling it an anti-Israel step. Unilever's CEO told investigators during an earnings call that it's committed to Israel's business. Unilever bought Ben & Jerry's in 2000 in a deal allowing it to operate with more autonomy than other subsidiaries. And British supermarkets say some products are already in short supply. It's after the UK's Virus Alert app told hundreds of thousands of workers to isolate. NTD's Patrick Hayden in London takes a look.
Britain's supermarkets, wholesalers and transporters are struggling to cope with the large numbers of people receiving isolation alerts. The government's virus track and trace app is generating the alerts when people are in the same place as an infected person. The situation has been labelled Pingdemic. The president of the Federation of Independent Retailers says its members are faced with a tough choice. That's whether to use the app, which is not mandatory.
But we are getting more and more of our shop workers, certainly in my shop I am, where especially the younger ones, they're saying they're deleting the app because they're getting pinged all the time. They're just ignoring it.
Rather than ignoring the isolation requests, many would rather not use the app. And for many, it comes down to whether they get paid or not.
A lot of these people who are getting pinged, of course, if they're paid on full pay, then that's why they're not deleting the app. The ones who will delete the app are the ones who actually don't get paid or get very little, and they think they can't afford to be pinged. They can't afford to stay at home for that length of time.
For those who would rather not be at work during the summer, using the app means a higher chance of being asked to isolate themselves.
If they're working in the shop and they're, especially with the summer holidays with the kids, they're going to take the advantage, aren't they? If they can be off for 10 days because they've been pinged, we don't ask to prove it. And basically they've got 10 days off at home, and, some people will get paid for that.
Supermarket group Iceland said it had closed a number of stores due to staff shortages. Business Secretary Kwesi Kwarteng said he did not recognise Sky News' characterisation of supermarket bare shelves, but he did say he was very concerned about the situation. The British Retail Consortium told NTD that the government needs to act fast. Reddish says the government is adamant they are not going to modify the app. The latest numbers show that more than 600,000 people were pinged in 1 week alone in the UK. Patrick Hayden, NTD News, London.
An Italian fashion boss, Brunello Cucinelli, is offering 6 months of paid leave to employees who refuse to get the shot. He says it's to protect workers who have been vaccinated. It comes as Rome debates whether to mandate vaccines in some workplaces. Cucinelli, who's famous for his $1,000 cashmere sweaters, says less than 1% of workers opted out of a vaccination campaign organized by the company a month ago. He says he can't make people get it, but he can't put people at risk either. His proposal is to have unvaccinated workers stay at home with 6 months paid leave and then decide what to do after that. Still to come this evening. A cruise that costs upward of $70,000 sells out within 3 hours. Where is it going and why is it so popular? And NASA's Perseverance rover about to begin its mission on Mars. It will collect samples from the red planet to determine if life could have existed there at one time. That and more after this short break.
Secure, the true solution for your digital privacy and security. Secure is a private and secure messaging and email solution hosted in Switzerland, using military-grade encryption and Swiss privacy laws, giving you true privacy. Secure is 100% private and does not collect or sell any of your personal data. Secure's Helix technology connects you securely to our Swiss servers without the need of a VPN, guaranteeing privacy and security for all your communications. Secure Messenger doesn't require your phone number or any personal data that hackers target. Chat by Invites allows you to chat privately and securely with anyone outside of your secure network without the need for others to download Secure. Secure Send offers you a private and secure way to email anyone outside of Secure. You won't find this level of privacy or security on any other email or instant messaging application. Visit secure.com. Regain and protect your privacy today.
What does it mean to devote your life to the truth? Does it mean investigating communist subversion here in America? Does it mean exposing the deadly fentanyl crisis in the Midwest? We're spending late nights and covering deep government corruption? Does it mean persevering over 20 years, even after 4 masked men set one of our printing presses on fire last year? Because at a time when America's traditional values are under attack, It's the responsibility of righteous journalists to uphold truth and tradition.
Welcome back. Dozens of muffin products are being recalled over possible listeria contamination. Give & Go Prepared Foods Corporation is voluntarily recalling the muffins. They're sold across the United States under various brand names, including Uncle Wally's. Walmart, 7-Eleven, and Stop & Shop are among the stores that sold them. The company's telling people to immediately dispose of the products. Give & Go says there are no reported illnesses yet, and the recall is just out of an abundance of caution. You can find more information and specific products in the recall at fda.gov. And NASA's Mars rover Perseverance is about to begin its historic hunt for signs of ancient life on the red planet. NASA scientists explained on Wednesday. NTD's Andrew Thomas reports.
We're getting photobombed by dust devils.
Perseverance has been working 7 days a week. The Mars rover is testing out and practicing with its various sophisticated instruments. It will soon start taking soil samples from the Jezero crater. Scientists believe the crater was once a lake bed about 60 miles wide that may hold evidence of potential life.
One of the hypotheses that we are trying to test is that the lake that once filled Jezero wasn't there just once, but that it went through multiple episodes of filling up, drying down, and filling up again.
Scientists believe the meteor impact that formed the Jezero crater likely created an environment friendly to life. They say the rover's instruments revealed that the crater contains different kinds of clay, which only form in the presence of water. The rover will take samples from the Martian surface for long-term storage during the first weeks in August. A sophisticated mechanism will put the soil samples into tubes using the rover's robotic arm. Then the rover will do some basic imaging and measuring before the sample tubes are sealed and stored in the rover's underbelly for return to Earth.
This is actually taken with a cache cam. It's a camera inside the adaptive caching assembly. It's imaging the inside of that witness tube. So inside there you see a witness tube assembly, which is what collects the contaminants. And then after we image it, we actually seal it and activate the seal. And that's what you see at the end of this video.
The rover's other experiments include MOXIE. That will show how oxygen can be extracted from the planet's carbon dioxide atmosphere for future missions. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
How would you like to take a 5-month-long cruise around the world? Tickets for the Region 2024 World Cruise went on sale last week. The fare started at more than $73,000 per person, but the price didn't seem to deter a lot of people. The cruise sold out in less than 3 hours. Region's Seven Seas Mariner set sail from Miami on January 6, 2024. The ship will stop at 66 ports, 31 countries, includes destinations like Central America, Hawaii, South Pacific Islands, Australia, New Zealand, Southeast Asia, and the Mediterranean. Sounds nice. As the latest business updates for today, you can still catch NTD Evening News with Stephanie Cox. That's at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. For NTD Business, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
We have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.